NIO, Li Auto, and Xpeng, XPEV is the ticker. I don't think these three companies are comparable. However, I see them lumped together a lot, and especially recently, I've seen people trying to make a comparison between Xpeng and NIO. So that's why I'm doing this video. But let's start with the single most important reason that I chose NIO and NIO Stock to focus on, and that is NIO is an IDE, a true innovative-driven enterprise. Now, on the left-hand side, you'll see an SME and sort of the growth trajectory expectation of an SME, which is a small medium enterprise, versus the right side, which is an IDE, an innovative driven enterprise. The difference is basically summarized as a larger global footprint potential for an IDE. Now, with that, this new venture in the IDE subset of startups faces initial challenges, and one example is greater investment at the start before revenue turns positive. And that results in negative earnings for a period, but with the prospect of impact later and exponential growth further up the curve. So again, if you look on the left-hand side, you see a steady, consistent, profitable pattern, probably more consistent and in line with what we've seen from Li Auto. Over here on the right-hand side, the IDE revenue, cash flow, jobs over time goes negative as that, especially the investment has to take place so that it can position itself to take more of a global footprint. And eventually we should see, provided NIO is able to, make all these things come through over the course of time and get to profitability, we should see massive profits and exponential growth. That's why I chose NIO. So I wanted to lead with that because that concept overview also means that I understand that in the short term, the quote unquote shorts, the short thesis, all the negativity, all the noise that we hear, that's just part of the early investment stage as this company is strategizing and positioning itself for massive long-term global profits. And that's what I see. So I don't mind all the short-term negativity, but because people did want to see this video, I'm doing it for you all. Now, here's the BEV chart as of October 2024. A couple things to point out. Li Auto is not even on this ranking. They have only one vehicle, the Mega, that they tried to roll out as a pure BEV, battery electric vehicle. Most of their vehicles are not BEVs, and so they do not have enough sales in the BEV sub-segment to actually make it on this chart. And in fact, after the Mega didn't do very well, they have since decided they don't really want to pursue the BEV side of the business. So again, not really a competitor in my mind with NIO. How about Xpeng? A lot of people are talking about them and mistakenly thinking that Xpeng is outselling NIO. But right here you see Xpeng at number 9 with almost 131,000 sales to date, year to date. And that's again, as of October 2024, while NIO with over 165,000. And by the way, the average NIO sales price is incredibly high versus Xpeng. If you want to do a comparison, then I think the appropriate thing to do is wait until Firefly, NIO's most affordable sub-brand, is out and delivered to the mass market. So probably next year at this time, you could make some comparison and see how Xpeng is doing versus the Firefly deliveries, for example. But that's the way I look at it. However, I don't only want to look at this. So let's look at the fails to deliver. And what we're going to do is start with Li Auto, which has had the best, as far as the stock price is going, it's had the best recent history. But I wanted to just go and look at the full history with you all so you can see what I'm seeing. All right. As you'll note, the yellow depicts the stock price. The white represents the fails to deliver, where there could have been naked shorting going on. And what you'll notice is there's really been only one big spike on the FTD side of things. Most of the time, there are not a lot of FTDs going on. Now, this could be partly because Li Auto did have some profitable quarters pretty early on. And so that was a positive for them. But again, I think that puts them more in the view of an SME rather than an IDE, if that makes sense. So that's kind of my view, my thinking. But I wanted to show this FTD chart so you could see the difference in these three companies with respect to their stock prices and the FTDs with the full history and versus the stock price action. Next, let's go Xpeng or XPEV as the ticker. We go out and look at their full history, and I think they have been listed since 2020. Yes, okay. So that's per all this data, which is what I have available with the FTD chart. So during this is kind of an interesting time frame. I think the big takeaway for me is it looks like the potential naked shorting is impacting the stock price for XPEV versus where it wasn't as common to see the FTDs spiking or elevated. But NIO is the one that I think is the most fascinating. As we zoom out and get the full history, it has been listed since 2018. And again, I think it's pretty obvious with the chart when you look at the high levels, the FTDs spiking, it's so elevated with the stock price being depressed. And then when the stock price rocketed during that time frame, that's when the stock price for NIO has been at its peak and at its higher levels. And since then, we've seen an uptick in the FTDs, the fails to deliver. And not surprisingly, the stock price has remained suppressed or depressed or whatever word you want to use to describe it. That's my kind of overview, the comparison that I wanted to do. Didn't want to do a real long video on this. Again, I think they're completely different companies, but because I know people, especially with Xpeng lately, have been trying to make a complaint or a comparison, I just thought, no, let's just crush this whole thing. And let me point out a few reasons that these are very different companies. The stock prices and the FTDs are looking really different with them. And even if we only look at the pure BEV side of things on the delivery side, NIO is well ahead of both of the companies. But again, back to the original point, and my choice and selection of this company, NIO, is because, yes, I expect and have no problem with them doing greater investment in the earlier years. And frankly, if I had to choose for the company to take a longer time to get to profitability, but to have more profits over time, I prefer that. I am fine waiting. The time is not an issue for me. I want the company to take as much of and position itself for the biggest global footprint it can possibly have so that it can generate that exponential growth, incredibly large profits, hopefully more than anyone is anticipating. And then let's see if the stock price doesn't reflect and show that over time. Often we've seen IDEs like Tesla, Amazon, Netflix, Apple, NVDA. These are all examples I've given, and I will come back with another video and talk about them with respect to FTDs and what we see with them. I think at a certain point, once the short thesis gets crushed with these IDE companies, and once they prove themselves capable of making big profits, I think the stock prices, not surprisingly, make really big moves. And I think we'll find that when I do a deeper dive and drill down a little bit on those companies. So that will be a video that I'll get to in the future. I'm not sure how soon I will get it out, but either way, I wanted to get this thing up and out and do not really a comparison of Li Auto and Xpeng and NIO, because again, I just don't see them as being comparable. But I wanted to offer some of my reasoning for why I don't think that they are comparable, and also share the FTD data. So drop it in the comments. I want to hear from you. Thanks for sticking around to the end. If you, in fact, made it to the end, have a great day. I'll see you all again very soon.